Using Azure SQL Active Directory Authentication provides a secure and centralized way to manage access to your Azure SQL databases. This method allows you to manage identities and authentication in one place, simplifying the process of granting and revoking access to your databases. The first key concept to understand is Active Directory itself, which is a directory service that provides a centralized repository of user and group accounts. By integrating your Azure SQL databases with Active Directory, you can leverage this existing infrastructure to manage access to your databases. To get started with Azure SQL Active Directory Authentication, you will need to create an Azure Active Directory and configure it to work with your Azure SQL databases. This involves creating a server administrator account and configuring the necessary permissions and access controls. One of the main benefits of using Azure SQL Active Directory Authentication is that it eliminates the need to store usernames and passwords in your database. Instead, users can access your databases using their existing Active Directory credentials, which provides an additional layer of security. Another key benefit is the ability to implement role-based access control, which allows you to assign specific permissions and access levels to different users and groups. This ensures that users only have access to the data and resources they need to perform their jobs, which helps to prevent unauthorized access and data breaches. In addition to these benefits, Azure SQL Active Directory Authentication also provides a number of practical advantages, such as simplified password management and the ability to use multi-factor authentication. This provides an additional layer of security and helps to prevent unauthorized access to your databases. To implement Azure SQL Active Directory Authentication in your organization, start by creating an Azure Active Directory and configuring the necessary permissions and access controls. Then, configure your Azure SQL databases to use Active Directory Authentication and assign the necessary roles and permissions to your users and groups. Best practices for using Azure SQL Active Directory Authentication include regularly reviewing and updating your access controls and permissions, using multi-factor authentication to provide an additional layer of security, and implementing role-based access control to ensure that users only have access to the data and resources they need. By following these steps and best practices, you can use Azure SQL Active Directory Authentication to provide a secure and centralized way to manage access to your Azure SQL databases. This will help to simplify the process of granting and revoking access, while also providing an additional layer of security and protecting your data from unauthorized access.